Dividends are very important for analyzing a stock, understanding what it does, right? Because if you don't understand, you could be missing a large portion of the picture. Something like Apple, clearly 254% in 5 years. That's a very good performance. However, some stocks, maybe it's only gone up 50% in 5 years. But if it pays a 4 or 5% dividend, you're missing a lot of the story, right? So something like Apple only pays a 0.43% dividend. And you may ask yourself, what is a dividend? Why is it important? So dividend is just a way for a company to pay money back to its shareholders, right? They decide, hey, we're going to give this money back to the shareholders, and it's divided evenly among all the shares, right? Usually. There's some wonky stuff sometimes. However, and then understanding how much you're getting back instead of like, doing the calculations, they do it for you. And basically the dividend yield is just, okay, this, you own this percent of it, this percent will get paid back. So just to make it real easy, if you own $100 in a share that pays a 5% dividend, you would get $5 back. And then if it moved up, that percent would change. Make math a little bit more challenging off the top of my head that I don't want to do. But that is a good way to understand that you're getting this amount percent of your total, or 5% of your total paid back to you every year, right? So something like this, Apple clearly does not have a super large dividend. 0.5% every year really isn't going to push the needle too much. Actually, historically, Apple never wanted to pay out a dividend, although they do now. Something like Pepsi primarily does pay out a dividend, right? Over the last 5 years, they basically matched inflation. So you really haven't got any value out of the share price. However, once you factor in the 3.33% dividend paid out every year, you actually, believe it or not, 3.5% every year, and it compounds a little bit too. So you've got a good amount of money back. Is it incredible? No, but it's still pretty good. One thing you do have to understand, dividends are good. However, they're not usually the best way to bring back the most profit possible. There certainly is scenarios if you mix something like Home Depot with reinvesting dividends. Home Depot pays a sizable dividend and has done very, very, very well over the last decade plus, right? Something like Duke Energy has done even better, right? Over the last 5 years, it's up 32% and pays a closer to 3.5% dividend, and it was much better in the lower spots as well. So some companies, like energy companies specifically, the main way they derive money back is really through dividends. You'll have to excuse me for a second there. The reason they do that is mainly because the industries they're in require lots of debt and are very stable forms of money back, right? So they like something like a utility company. Everyone pays a utility bill every month, right? So they have a constant stream in, but also they have to pay a lot out. So it's really easier. They don't have like, this new product's doing well, and then they're up a couple, something like a tech stock. So something like an energy company is really just meant to pay dividends back. It's just the easiest way for the company to do so. So you'll see that pretty often. And you may say, okay, dividends are incredible, right? And don't get me wrong, they're good, but you have to be careful. Just because the dividend's high doesn't mean it's good. For example, Verizon, right? We can maybe even call this a dividend trap. Over the last, 5 years, it's down 26%, and it pays a 6% dividend. We're going to assume that's what it paid the entire time. It probably fluctuated quite a bit, but over this course of this, you would still be up. You would have more than broke even, but just because it pays a 6% dividend does not mean it's a good performing stock, right? Because like we said, it's down 26%. You get 6% every year, right? 5 times 6 is 30, 26, just assume. So you made like 4%. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's a simple calculation. So you really didn't gain that much, and it's really not that hard to do 4% in 5 years. Actually, you probably did lose money because of inflation and all that. So, and I'm not sitting here to just rag, Verizon's dumb, because it could be a great hold now. Just over these last 5 years, just because it paid a high dividend doesn't mean that it's good. How I like dividends primarily in two ways. I've talked about on this channel quite a bit. I like it usually in two ways. Either one, maybe with similar stocks, a portfolio, even one that is aiming for a 3 to 4% dividend yield and then matching, preferably beating inflation. But then you can just take that yield and not even worry about it, and your stocks will continue to go up or at least match inflation. Something like Duke's and Pepsi would be good for that. But something like JEP, I almost said JPEI, which is not correct, is maybe an example of another one that I like. Although it has, over the last 5 years, matched inflation, I wouldn't necessarily expect it. It pays a 7.2% yield, which is good. It really is. It's higher, somewhere in that 5, 6, 7 range is also possible. I'm just conservative with it, so I would expect this to not maintain 7% every year. There will be some stocks that will do that, and that's really good. Excuse me. But something like this, maybe a 5, 6, 7% yield, you would set some more money aside, expecting it to go down, maybe not matching inflation, right? But you can definitely get a dividend portfolio that gets a yield near that amount, right? So I think I've covered most of the basics on stock during this video. If I left anything confusing, don't be afraid to ask me questions down in the comment section. I'd love to expand on them. But I think this is most of the basics of stocks covered and kind of what you're looking for forward in it. So just be careful when you're paying attention to some stocks to make sure you factor in the dividend that it pays to it, because you could be missing a lot. Something could look terrible, but it pays a 2.5 and it looks much better, or vice versa, right? Something, it's like, I don't know. But anyways, I appreciate all of you for watching. If you enjoyed, I appreciate if you left a like, subscribe if you are new and you enjoy the content. I do daily stock content on this channel. I notice when anyone hits the subscribe button, I often get a burst of views, and it correlates with a lot of that. So YouTube pushes the content out because they're like, oh, someone enjoys it. But anyways, I appreciate all of you for watching. I hope you learned something. I'll catch you next time.